Hey everyone,
Hey guys.
welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor video. Tonight we're coming to you live from Dubai. This is the fifth stop on our trip around the world this year. Tonight we're going to be talking about living, traveling, travel therapy in an RV or in a camper. This is something that we have a lot of experience with. We lived in a fifth wheel for several years, traveling around the country when we first started as travel PTs. So we're going to talk about some of the pros and cons, some of the considerations for those of you that are interested in possibly pursuing that route, some things to watch out for, some mistakes we made, and then answer any questions that you have. We took a few questions before we did the video, so we'll answer those as well. Whitney's going to introduce us, and I'm going to get this video shared in a few different groups.
All right, hey guys, for those that may not know us, my name is Whitney Aiken.
And I'm Jared Kazaza.
And we're both traveling doctors of physical therapy. We've been travel PTs for over 7 years now. As Jared mentioned, for the first 3 years of our travel career, we traveled in an RV. And then we actually sold our RV, and for the last several years, we've only been working part-time as travel therapists. We'll talk a little bit more about that and why we decided to sell the RV in this video. But now we only work part-time and we travel around the world and travel within the US for fun the rest of the year. We also have our blog and our online business, Travel Therapy Mentor. And for those of you guys that may know us from before we had Travel Therapy Mentor, our first original blog is actually called Fifth Wheel Physical Therapist. And that was named because we were traveling in a fifth wheel. And at the time that we started doing that, and we bought it at the end of 2015 and started traveling it at the beginning of 2016, we didn't know really anyone that was traveling in an RV. There definitely were some travel nurses and people that we'd heard of, mostly actually through patients where they'd heard of someone traveling in an RV, but social media wasn't as robust back then. Instagram wasn't as popular. There weren't people really sharing their stories about traveling in an RV, so it was pretty unique back then when we started Fifth Wheel PT. But we'll get all into that. As Jared mentioned, he's sharing the video in a few groups so that more people can tune in with us live and learn more about this topic. So for those of you guys that are watching live, we'd love if you'd say hi in the comments. I know some of you guys will watch later because we're doing this at a different time than usual. We're doing it in the middle of the day, US time. It's funny, Jared said this evening because it's 9 p.m. right now where we are in Dubai, but where you guys probably are in the US, it's anywhere between 9 a.m. and noon on Sunday. So thanks for those that are tuning in live. I know that some of you guys will watch later on the replay or listen later on the podcast. So thanks for those of you guys that will listen later. Couple announcements while we're waiting to get started and dive into the topic here. We are 3 weeks into our 9-week trip. So far we've been to Greece. We went to 3 different places in Greece. We went to Egypt and now Dubai. Next we go to Singapore, and then we're going to Australia, New Zealand, and hopefully American Samoa. So if you guys haven't been following along with our trip, it's been a really amazing trip. We've seen some awesome stuff. It's going to be hard to top seeing the pyramids. And Dubai is a pretty cool city, and Greece was fabulous, but we're really excited to see more. If you haven't been following along, you can follow on Facebook or Instagram. I tend to post a lot of pictures on our story on Instagram, and then I try to make some reels here and there about some of the things that we've been doing. So definitely try to follow us on Instagram or Facebook if you're not already. A couple other announcements. We'll be traveling from now until Christmas. We just booked our flight back actually from New Zealand back to the US on Christmas Eve. So we'll be traveling for another 6 weeks or so. In addition to that, we have Thanksgiving coming up. I can't believe Thanksgiving's only 2 weeks away. And then following Thanksgiving, there will be Black Friday, and you'll see a lot of people obviously doing Black Friday sales. We're going to probably do some sales for that, so keep an eye out for a sale on our travel therapy course if that's something you're interested in. I think there's also going to be a MedBridge sale for continuing ed, and then possibly some other sales, so keep an eye out for that. We'll send that out on social media and on our newsletter. So Jared's just getting this shared again to a couple of groups, but we're getting ready to get started. Shout out to those of you guys that are watching live. Hi Tess, hey Ariel, hey Brian, hey Victoria, hey Armand, hey Armin, hey Ali, hey Nini. Let's see, and we got a comment from Ariel. Oh, she says, congratulations on your engagement. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was several months ago. Yeah, that's exciting. We just got engaged in May, and we're planning on getting married this coming June. But we've got a lot of travel between now and then. It's funny, we have barely been home long enough to plan any kind of wedding, but we're getting excited, so thank you.
All right, so in terms of RV life, like Whitney said, like I said, We traveled for several years in an RV. Actually, what we did, so a little bit of background on how we did it. We started taking contracts in the middle of 2015. We decided to take contracts close to home so that we could save as much as possible so that we could buy a camper and truck in cash. We didn't want to take out a loan. So that was the plan from the very beginning. We knew we wanted to do that before we ever started traveling, but we just wanted to save up some money first. So we worked for about 6 months as travelers, about an hour and a half from home, saved enough money to pay for a used truck and a used camper. So starting around 2016, we traveled in that. We did 2.5 years of straight contracts, mostly back-to-back contracts, until the middle of 2018 when we went on our first around the world trip. We spent 5 months on that trip. So that's when we kind of moved out of it. And then we later moved back into it for another assignment in 2019. So in total, we spent about 3 years in the camper living in it, and we owned it for about 4 years. So that's a little bit of background about how we got it and our experience with it.
Yeah, and what made us decide to get into RV life? So actually, when we were still students, our second year of PT school, or I think toward the end of our first year of PT school, we had started talking about doing travel therapy. And I wasn't totally sold on it yet, but we had started talking about it. And then by second year, we were both pretty sure that's what we wanted to do, but we were still talking about the logistics. And actually, when I was on one of my clinical internships as a student, my second year of PT school, I was working with a patient, and the patient asked me, "Oh, what are you planning to do after graduation?" And I told him that my boyfriend and I were going to start doing travel therapy. And he said, "Oh, you should get an RV." And the thought had never once crossed our minds. We'd never heard of doing anything like that. Never thought of it before. And I said, "An RV? Why would we do that?" And he was like, "Oh, I used to travel. My wife and I used to travel in an RV. And sometimes when we were at the RV parks, we would meet travel nurses that traveled in an RV, and it's a good way to do it." So I went home that afternoon and I told Jared, and I was like, "Oh, my patient said this thing about an RV. I don't know." And he was like, "That's actually a great idea." And so it kind of sparked an interest in us, and we started looking into it. And we realized it might really help us logistically to move around from place to place in an RV. And I think the biggest thing that really sparked Jared's interest at the time, and a lot of what might make some of you guys interested in RVing, is he thought, wow, we could probably save a lot of money on housing by doing it that way.
Yeah, I knew that short-term housing was going to be expensive. I thought, okay, we get an RV, you pay up front for it, and then you pretty much have free housing. That's what I thought at the time. And I was pretty naive back then. But so we went into it thinking we'd save a ton of money. Turns out we didn't save as much as we thought we would. So we'll get more into that in the pros and cons. But saving money was our reason for doing that. I think a lot of people choose to buy an RV, travel in an RV to save money.
Yeah, and so then just to give you guys a little bit more background about our story, again, we had no idea anything about RVing. Neither of us had ever been in an RV. Our families had never camped or had an RV before. We knew nothing at all. We just went into it thinking, one, it'll make it easier. Two, we'll probably save money. So we started doing some research, but we knew nothing. So we thought, well, probably if we can buy a used one, we'll save more money. Just like, buying a used car, you save more money by not losing it on the depreciation immediately when you drive it off the lot, right? So we were like, okay, we'll probably buy a used one. So, we both had experience with buying used cars, so we just thought, oh, easy peasy. You just look online, you look at all the websites. There's like one called RV Trader. There's Camping World. There's these different sites where people are selling them. You can look on Craigslist. At this time, Facebook Marketplace didn't exist. And you're just looking the normal way you would look to buy a used car. And then we went to a couple RV dealerships. We went to a couple RV shows. We went and walked inside of them. And we thought the biggest decision that we really needed to make was like what kind of layout and what size we would want. So we spent way more time worrying about the layout and the size, and probably not enough time actually learning like what are the problem areas you should look for to make sure you don't get a bad one.
Yeah. And I know I see some people in here that travel in RVs now, so if you guys have any opinions on anything we say, feel free to weigh in. Current RV travelers are going to be way more in the know about current situations, RV camp rent, things like that. So we're going to talk about that. But if you guys have anything to say, feel free to chime in. But yeah, we did a lot of research, but I think we should have done research on different things. So yeah, Whitney spent so much time thinking about the exact layout she wanted, and we went back and forth between a travel trailer and a fifth wheel, and we thought about like a Class C, and so we didn't know anything about the classes or anything like that in the beginning, but we learned about that, looked at the layouts, but we didn't spend much time looking at like issues that we might have or what to look for in terms of making sure that it's structurally sound. We thought those kind of things were like, oh, it'll be obvious if there's something wrong. So little did we know it's not obvious.
Yeah, so we ended up, long story short, we ended up deciding a fifth wheel was the best choice for us. We found one that was used for sale at Camping World. I think they basically like consign them from people. Maybe people sell them to Camping World and then Camping World sells them or whatever. It's kind of like how dealerships will sell used cars that they got from other people. Maybe they got it on a trade-in or whatever. So we bought it, and we ended up buying it from Camping World. And then separately we bought the truck, I think from Craigslist through an individual. And we ended up, we had to do research about, what size truck to get and all that kind of stuff. So we got a used truck, a used camper. We had a 2009 Coachman Chaparral fifth wheel. And at this time it was 2016, so it was 7 years old. And I think our truck was an 06?
Yeah, it was an 06.
06 Ford F-250 diesel. And a lot of people had told us to get a diesel truck because it would have better towing capacity and longer lifespan and all that. So, but again, we didn't know anything about diesel trucks, and we ended up with a bad truck. So long story short, we got this used RV, we got this used truck. It was a good experience overall, but we definitely ended up having some problems. We had some water damage that was pre-existing in the camper that we didn't know about, that we ended up later having to pay a lot of money to get fixed. We had some other maintenance kind of issues come up with the camper. The truck ended up being a model that apparently a lot of people who have diesel trucks knew that this particular model and this particular engine had issues, but we aren't truck people and we didn't know that. So we ended up having to do a lot of repairs and a lot of maintenance on the truck that cost us money. So in the long run, when people ask us, did you like RVing? Would you recommend it to others? We did enjoy it. We do think it was a great experience, but there were definitely a lot of headaches and hassles that we didn't anticipate, and we didn't necessarily go into it the most prepared.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I would have done different. One thing you have to remember in this whole process is finding a camper, finding a truck, going to RV shows, finding what you like, all of that stuff is time consuming. And at the time, we were trying to work as much as possible. So like I said, we worked 6 months, we saved as much as we could, we started looking at RVs and trucks while we were working, so we didn't have a lot of time to go look at RVs and go look at trucks, and there wasn't a lot available around where we were, so it involved like 3 or 4 hour weekend trips, so it was way more time consuming than we knew it would be, and that was one thing that now if I could go back, I probably would have bought it before we ever started traveling when we had more time. Even though we would have had to take out a loan, it still would have been probably better overall. We had more time back then. While working, while trying to work overtime, stuff like that, and then also trying to find a truck and camper that works, we kind of rushed it and probably made a bad decision.
But at the same time, sometimes now when people reach out to us and ask us if they should get a camper to start traveling, which we're going to go into a lot more detail about this, part of it is if you don't know for sure if you're going to continue traveling. And so sometimes we recommend that you start traveling, doing it the regular way, like getting an apartment, and do it for 6 months or something, and make sure that you're really all in before you buy a camper, unless you've already really weighed your options and you know for sure that you're going to do it. But for some people, it might not be the best choice to go all in and buy an RV, and then what if you don't like traveling? Yeah,
that's a really good point. Actually, we were very fearful. We didn't know. We only knew one traveler back then who had stopped before we ever started, and we didn't know if he'd like to travel at all. We really didn't know much about it at all. There was no Facebook groups or anything like that to talk to travelers. So yeah, we didn't know if we were going to like it, and that was another reason why we waited. So there are pros and cons there. If you get it before you start traveling, you don't know if you're going to even like travel. If you get it after, then you have to think about how do you work and find a good camper, find a good truck, all that.
Yeah. So let's jump into some more details to give you guys some ideas about the pros and the cons and some considerations, some logistics. While we're going through this video, if you have any questions, if you're watching live, please feel free to put the questions in the comments. Some questions that we already got before that we're definitely going to touch on are 1, how do you find RV parks? 2, how do you learn how to park and drive it? 3, do you come out ahead financially? Do you save money? That sort of thing. So first, let's start with some of the pros. What are some of the benefits of traveling in an RV?
So the first thing is it's possibly cheaper. And the reason we say possibly cheaper is because there's so many variables. Are you going to buy new? Are you going to buy used? Where are you going to be traveling to? There's a lot of things that come into the considerations there. Are you going to be driving across the country? Because gas mileage is more expensive. So if you drive across the country back and forth, it's going to cost you a lot. So there's a lot of things that potentially can make it not as affordable or not save as much as you think you would. So possibly it could be cheaper, but only in the right situations. Another positive that we really enjoyed was less hassle packing and moving. Once we started doing more short-term housing, we realized how beneficial it was having the RV and being able to do that, because packing and moving was no big deal. We didn't have to take things out of drawers. We just put tape around the handles of the cabinet so they didn't fly open and left. I mean, we just kind of packed things up, put it away, but we didn't have to put in totes and carry it from one place to the other or put it in the car, So that was a lot easier. It would take us maybe 3 or 4 hours to get everything put away, get it hooked up to the truck and leave. Whereas if we were packing everything up, putting it in the car, it would probably take a lot longer than that.
In addition to that, you can have as much stuff with you as you want at any given time. We had all of our seasons of clothing with us. We didn't have to pick and choose which clothes we were going to bring because we were trying to fit it in a car. So whatever you can fit in the RV, it's just always there with you. You can always bring it with you. I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, and honestly, we brought way more than we would have been able to bring if we had to pack and move. We brought almost everything we owned. We brought all of my clothes, almost all of Whitney's clothes, a bunch of other stuff that we had that we wouldn't have been able to fit in a car. So yeah, that was a kind of a helpful thing to have way more space to take things.
Yeah.
Another big benefit that we really enjoyed was the consistency of having the same space. Even though you're changing cities, you're changing jobs, everything else is changing, at least you still have the same furniture, you have the same bed. You have all of that consistency that you wouldn't have otherwise. You don't have to worry about getting in a really bad situation where the layout of the place that you're staying is terrible, or you have really loud upstairs neighbors. The things that you run into with short-term housing. You don't have to worry about any of that. So you have the consistency, which is a very nice thing. Also, you don't have to worry about setting up utilities. So this was something that may or may not apply if you find short-term housing that doesn't have utilities included. Some people do that. They find unfurnished place. Then you have to worry about setting up utilities, disconnecting them, all that stuff. With an RV, you don't worry about any of that. Utilities are usually included. If not, then it's like a metered electric thing, but it's no problem setting all that up, plugging it in. Very easy there. Another thing that kind of goes along with the less hassle packing and moving is quicker turnaround time between assignments. So we were able to really quickly move from one assignment to the next. Put everything away, hook up the camper to the truck. We did 12-hour drives and would finish on a Friday, start on a Monday. And we were able to do that in the camper. That I think it would be a little bit harder to do that if we had to pack everything up, clean the apartment before we leave, drive to the next place, get everything unloaded. I think it would be a little more time consuming. So we were able to do a lot of back-to-back contracts that would have been significantly harder if we weren't in the camper.
And that really helped us financially. We did this for 2.5, 3 years. Back to back contracts. We lost no time, no money due to downtime between contracts. Now, we were a little bit different. We were really focused on saving at this time, and we only took jobs on the East Coast where our moves could end on a Friday, start on a Monday. Like Jared said, I think the longest we ever drove was 12 or 14 hours, and usually it was less than 10 hours, like 5, 6, 7 hours. So that really helped us financially this first several years.
Yep. Another benefit is that it's much better for people that have families or pets, because it can be really hard to find short-term housing if you have, say, 2 or 3 dogs or multiple cats or whatever. Short-term housing, they either charge you more or they just won't accept you with pets at all. So that makes it harder. And then people with families, you have your own place that you take with you. You don't have to worry about making sure that it's a good fit for your kids or whatever if you find short-term housing. So I think for people with pets and families, it makes a lot of sense to have an RV. You have that consistency, and it's not so difficult to find short-term places. And then the last one, this was kind of an afterthought, we were talking about this, was not being locked into a lease or having to put down a security deposit or something like that. So some of the horror stories that we hear from travelers that have bad experiences are situations where they start a contract, they get locked into like a 3-month lease for housing. They can't find anything, they sign a 3-month lease, or they don't know any better, and then their contract gets canceled, say, 3 or 4 weeks in. And then they're stuck with this lease. They don't know how to get out of it. They don't know what to do. Their job's ending. Should they leave the lease? Should they try to find part-time work around there? They just get stuck in this situation. So that's usually like a worst-case scenario for travelers. And for an RV, you don't have to worry about that. It's usually month to month, but it can't even be week to week. So you can pretty much get out whenever you want. There's no hassle with that. There's no security deposit, so you don't have to worry about losing that. So that's another benefit.
Yeah, so worst case scenario, if you just paid for a full month, you might be out 1 month or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But a lot of times they'll probably refund your money because it's not really that big of a deal to them, because they could easily get somebody in there probably. But yeah, you definitely won't be losing. Okay, so let's talk about some of the negatives, some of the cons of traveling in an RV.
All right, so just to recap the pros real quick, possibly cheaper, less hassle packing and moving, which kind of goes along with quicker turnaround times to new assignments. Consistency of space, no setting up utilities, better for pets and families, and you don't have to worry about being locked into a lease or having a security deposit. So some of the cons, one of the big ones is there's a learning curve for RVing. Driving, parking, setting it up, hooking it up to a truck, the connections for sewer, the connections for water, learning, where the hot water heater is, what you do if something happens there. There's just a learning curve with things. It's like having a house, but a house on wheels where things can break more easily. So there's a lot of things that you need to understand, and a lot of things that can go wrong. So there's definitely a learning curve there. We didn't realize that it would be as difficult because, like Whitney said, we had zero experience with campers. We'd never even been in a camper until we bought ours. So learning all that was a little harder than we anticipated.
Yeah, so it's definitely a lifestyle choice, which we'll get into talking about more of whether it is a good choice for you or not. But it's not a choice to be taken lightly. It's definitely a whole lifestyle that you have to learn about.
Yep. The next downside, repairs and maintenance. Like I said, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. You're driving it down the road. Things get vibrated loose. Lights, you have issues with lights. You might have issues with plumbing, connections, leaks, things like that as the camper gets vibrated when you're driving. So little things like that you wouldn't think that much about, but when you have a camper, you realize, oh, there's an issue there. Oh, there's water damage here. So repairs and maintenance are a big issue.
And I think the biggest thing about that for us was if you choose to be a traveler who rents a place, you're essentially not going to have to worry about that stuff, right? Because you're going to have a landlord. So things go wrong all the time in a house, in an apartment, in a camper. It's just normal. But if you're a renter and you're just there temporary, you're not going to be the one that necessarily has to deal with the problem. But if you're traveling in an RV, you have to maintain your own home on wheels. So it just is kind of a choice whether that's something you want to deal with or not.
Yep. Another con, this goes with the pro that I was talking about. It's possibly cheaper, but it's possibly more expensive. So we'll go into more about that, what could cost more and what will cost less in the next section, but it could be more expensive depending on the decisions you make, how long you travel, things like that. Also, finding reliable RV tow vehicle. If you choose to get a travel trailer or a fifth wheel, you have to find a truck and you have to make sure the truck's reliable. So it's not just finding the camper and being like, oh, I got this camper, it's great. If it's a really heavy camper, you need a diesel truck, and you have to make sure that you make a good choice there. So multiple things to consider when purchasing the truck and the RV. Another issue that we ran into and we get questions pretty often about is Wi-Fi. What do you do about Wi-Fi? A lot of campgrounds have Wi-Fi. It's usually not the greatest. So usually the Wi-Fi is like in the clubhouse or the office or whatever, and that could be 300 or 400 yards away from your camper. So usually the connection's not great. There are some times that they have like, what is it called? The
Wi-Fi extenders.
Yeah, the extenders, and so we had a couple campgrounds that Wi-Fi was great and there was no issue at all. But you're going to run into situations where Wi-Fi is not great, so you need to have some solution there, either a hotspot or I know Starlink. Some people choose to get that now, but you have to figure out what you're going to do about Wi-Fi. And then another thing, the last con I would say is that it's a smaller space. And for bigger people, so anyone bigger than me, you're probably going to have issues in an RV. I thought a little bit about it. We purposely got a fifth wheel because it was bigger, but like the shower in our fifth wheel was real tight for me. I'm 6'3", so my head hit in our bedroom, my head hit in the shower. So anybody bigger than me, it would be difficult. And going in and out, the doors are very small. So yeah, probably not for bigger people.
Yeah, whether you're tall or heavier set, both of those would be considerations for being a tight space. But I will say it was a lot more space than what we initially thought when we started looking into RVs. It was very comfortable. We really enjoyed living. The living space itself was very nice. It was just like an apartment on wheels. There's various sizes that you can get, but it definitely is, it's a little bit smaller. It's going to be smaller than an apartment, and could be some nooks and crannies you have trouble getting into if you are a bigger person.
Yep. Okay. So to recap the cons, learning curve for lifestyle, the camper lifestyle, how to park it, how to connect everything. There's some issues there. Repairs and maintenance. Again, this depends highly on the RV you get, how new it is, how well you maintain it. but you have to think about things are going to break. You're going to have to do some maintenance on it. You need to seal around the roof regularly, around the skylights and around any openings to make sure there's no leaks. Possibly more expensive. It can be hard finding a truck or something to pull it with if you get a travel trailer or a fifth wheel. You have to think about what you're going to do about Wi-Fi to have reliable Wi-Fi, and then also it's a smaller space, and that both applies to tall people, big people, but also just that most apartments are going to be significantly bigger area, so you have more place to put things. So think about that.
Yeah. If you guys are watching live so far, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. I know a few of you guys that are watching live are RVers yourselves, so if you have anything in addition to that pros and cons list, or if you just want to tell the group about some of your own experiences, please leave that in the comments, because we know that our experience isn't the same as everyone else's. So we would love to hear from you guys. We know that there are tons of people out there who RV for 5, 10 plus years and love it.
Yeah.
So we definitely want to hear from you guys. If you're watching this and you are getting value from the video, we would really appreciate if you could hit the thumbs up button. Let us know if you're enjoying it, if you're learning anything. So let's go into some more detail about whether it may or may not be a good choice for you personally.
Yeah, so who we think it's a good idea for. It's probably a good idea for people that have pets or families. Like we said, short-term housing can be more difficult to find for travelers with pets or with kids, because you need more space. You have to usually put a bigger security deposit down. You can run into issues with pets. If they damage anything, you might have to pay more money. So having your own space is nice for people with pets and families.
Yeah, so we know a ton of people that travel with especially dogs, especially multiple dogs, or bigger dogs or dog breeds where they have a little more trouble finding housing, or they know for sure they're going to have to pay more to get pet-friendly housing. So tons of our friends that have pets really enjoy RVing. Tons of our friends who are couples really enjoy RVing together. It works really well for them. We know people now that are traveling with children in their RV, and that works really well for them. Some of them have the bunk houses, which allows you to have extra space or a second bedroom. It works really well to not have to move your family around as much. In addition to that, if you are a couple or family, sometimes you need more space. So you're always going to have to be renting a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. So for a lot of folks that have families or are couples or have pets, it's going to be much more financially feasible, as well as logistically feasible. So we absolutely think that's the best choice. Now, what if you're a solo traveler? We certainly know solo travelers that still RV and still it's a great choice for them, and they like it that way. Would I travel by myself in an RV? Personally, no, but we do know both males and females that travel by themselves in RVs and enjoy it.
Yeah, I honestly probably would not either by myself. I have said in the past, and potentially I would get a very small, like a really small camper, 15 foot or something like that if I was by myself, and maybe make it work that way, but I would definitely not get a big travel trailer or a fifth wheel if I was traveling by myself.
Yeah, and so for some people, like we've had some solo travelers reach out to us and ask us about like van life. Would a van or would a smaller RV work? That could be a good choice, especially for a solo person. We are not huge van life people for long-term travel. We have traveled in a van, like a minivan for road trips, and we know lots of people that have converted vans that love them. We think that they're pretty small space-wise and don't always have all the amenities that you would want to live like longer term for. Some of them do have toilets and showers, but a lot of them don't. So long-term, quite often an RV is a better choice than a van is. Also, vans, if you convert it yourself or buy one that's converted, just because they're really popular in the last several years, are quite often more expensive than just getting an RV. I forget, is it a Class B?
Yeah, Class B
C?
is like basically a big van.
So the Class B RVs are basically vans, but they're already made that way from the factory, like from Camping World or from wherever. And they're often a lot more affordable than buying a Sprinter van and converting it. So that's a little bit about van versus RV. Okay, so who else do we think it might be good for? It might be a good idea for somebody who already has RV or camping experience, especially if you already have one. If you're somebody who already has an RV, or if your family has an RV that you can use or something like that, and you already have experience with it, yeah, that might be a really great choice for you to just take that on the road.
Yeah, if you already have some experience with it, You already know the ins and outs. It would be a much easier process for you than it was for us. You also would know what to look for when buying an RV, or hopefully you know someone that can go with you and look at it. Otherwise, you probably need to pay for someone to go look at the RV with you, especially if you're buying used. But even if you're buying new, because we know a couple people now that have bought new RVs that still had a lot of issues with them. So it's worth getting an inspection. It's worth paying someone to go with you if you don't know anyone.
Yep. Who else it might be good for? If you're someone who is very outdoorsy and knows that you would already enjoy the camping RV lifestyle, it may be a good choice for you. Similarly, it's not just about being outdoorsy, because really, I mean, it's like glamping, right? Like, it's fancy camping. It's not, you don't have to be that outdoorsy. I really wasn't. But it could be a good choice for you if you already know that you sort of like that kind of lifestyle. It might also be good for you if you're the type of person who knows that you enjoy projects, like you enjoy home projects, you enjoy working on things. The things like the maintenance and the repairs aren't going to bother you. We met a couple this year that travel in a truck camper, and the husband loves projects. That's like his favorite hobby. Whether he was at home or they were renting a place or he has the RV, that's like what he enjoys to do as a hobby. So he loves having the truck camper to work on, and the truck itself to do things on the weekends. For us, that's just personally how we didn't want to spend our weekends doing that kind of stuff. But if you know that you're the type of person who likes projects and you are very handy, it could be a good choice for you.
Yeah, I'm not very handy at all, and we wanted to spend our weekends like hiking and going to new cities and things like that. So we neglected a lot of maintenance, which ends up biting you in the long run. So if you're someone that enjoys that kind of thing, it's definitely better for you.
Yeah. I would say along with that, know your personal stress level. If things do happen and things do go wrong, are you someone who deals with problems very easily, or is it going to really stress you out and make you worried? We kind of get a little bit stressed. So I just think, when we've told other RVers in the past, like one of the reasons we wanted to get out of RVing is because it was stressful and the maintenance and the repairs, they're like, I don't feel that way at all. Like, I don't have that much trouble with mine. But it just depends on what type of person you are, I think.
Yeah, I saw some questions coming in. We'll get to those at the end. I think we got about probably 10 more minutes or so of things that we'll cover, and then we'll go back to the questions.
Yeah. And then the last thing we consider as to whether it's a good idea for you or not. If you're looking at the financial side of it, Jared did a lot of calculations and figured out that you probably need to travel in it at least 2.5 to 3 years, depending on how much you put into it and what you think the resale value is going to be, to come out ahead financially. And we're going to talk more about the financial aspects of it.
Yeah, so that's one of the most common questions we get is, do you come out ahead financially? Did we come out ahead? It's really hard to say because there's so many different variables here. Repairs, extra gas costs, personal property taxes, depreciation, all of those things factored in. A rough estimate, I would say we broke even versus finding short-term housing, which is usually a surprise to people. We traveled in it 3 years taking contracts, and I think we just barely broke even after you factor in how much we lost from the truck and camper. We lost about, in depreciation costs, we lost about $14,000 over the course of the 4 years that we owned the truck and camper.
So to give you the actual purchase price and the sale price, between the truck and the camper, we were shooting for $40,000 or less because we bought a used truck and a used camper, and that seemed like a reasonable budget, and we came in under budget on that. We spent about $35,000 to buy both the truck and the camper used. We ended up selling it at the very beginning of 2020 in February, I think February or like the first week of March. I think it was February 2020. And at this time, we were kind of in a hurry to sell it because we were getting ready to go on a 5-month trip out of the country that we planned to Latin
Spoiler
America.
alert, it didn't happen.
Spoiler
but
alert.
We were in a hurry to sell
February 2020, it didn't happen. But anyway, we were really eager to sell it. We had actually tried to sell it the year before, and we didn't allow enough time. We didn't get any hits, so we didn't sell it. We put it back in storage, lived in it one more time, and we were like, we don't want to put it in storage for this trip. So we were eager to sell it. So we sold it for less than we probably should have. And in hindsight, when COVID hit, and like 6 to 12 months later, RVs and used cars were in super high demand. We could have probably sold it for more than what we bought it for at that time, but hindsight's 2020. We never would have known. So to recap, we spent about $34,000 on ours, and we only sold them for about $20,000.
Yeah, combined the truck and the camper. So we lost about $14,000 there. We had significant amounts of repairs. Mostly the more costly ones were actually the truck, but we did have camper repairs as well. So I think, I don't know exactly how much. I know we had at least 2 truck repairs that were well over $1,000, $1,500 or more. So that added up quickly. So if you think about $14,000 depreciation, repair costs, extra gas costs driving to and from assignments, personal property taxes, I think that was maybe probably in total maybe $1,000 over the 4 years. Yeah, so I think we just barely broke even. I think when we did the calculations comparing it to like a short-term rental, I think we saved somewhere around $500 to $600 a month renting a campground versus what we would have paid with short-term housing. So if you take that $500 or $600 a month, multiply it by the 3 years that we traveled in it for contracts, you come out very close to breaking even. So we did not save a ton of money like we thought we would.
Yeah. So for a lot of people, you are going to save on your month-to-month costs. That's for sure. But it's just going to depend on how much you end up paying in the beginning and how much you think you're going to get the resale value out of it. If you buy new, you're probably going to come out behind even more than we did. Not necessarily, but maybe if you buy a brand new one. I mean, these things can cost a lot. Just the RV itself can cost $40,000 new. So it's just going to depend on how good of a deal you can get, and if you keep it in good condition and are able to sell it later for roughly what you got out of it. Or if you're somebody who thinks you might keep it a long time, maybe you keep it even after you stop traveling, and then you spread it out over a longer period of time, you get enjoyment out of it, you get value out of it. So it's going to depend. But if you, for example, are somebody who goes and buys a new truck and a new camper, travels for a year and a half, turns around and sells it for a loss, you're going to come out behind.
Yeah, I mean, just buying a new truck and a new camper alone, if you think about how much sales tax is, depending on if you're buying in a state with sales tax, that's a lot of money right there. That's a big upfront cost. You're always going to lose money on depreciation if you buy a brand new truck, a brand new camper, and then you sell it a year or two later. You're going to lose money there unless it's some crazy situation like COVID where prices get irrational. But for the most part, you're going to lose money there. So if it's a short time that you're traveling, you probably don't want to go with a camper if your primary purpose is to save money. If it's something where you have a family or dogs and it just makes your life easier to do it that way, then great. But don't go into it thinking you're going to save a lot of money, travel for a year or two, you're probably not.
Yeah, I think our biggest, and we have some more to go into because I know people have some specific questions about logistics of traveling. Excuse me. I was sick like 4 weeks ago. I was sick 1 week before we left for this trip. And I swear I still have a residual cough. Like I don't know what it is. I feel like I just stay sick. I think it's long COVID from like a year ago when I had COVID. I don't know. I'm not sick, but every now and then I just cough. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, basically when people ask us, like, should I get into RVing? Should I get an RV because I'm going to save money? If your only reason to think about getting into like being an RV person, doing RV life is to save money, we don't think that's a good choice.
Yeah.
We think you need to take into consideration all these other things. Is it a lifestyle that you want to live? Does it make your life easier for these other reasons so that if you break even or come out behind, you're still going to have enjoyed doing it? But don't just think like, wow, that's like the secret key to saving money as a traveler is RVing, because it's not that big of a difference financially long term. Okay, so we're going to answer some more of the questions that are in the comments, but we did get some questions just about like the logistics of like, well, if I decided to go this route, how's it going to work? So we talked a little bit about buying. We would recommend trying to buy slightly used if possible so you don't lose out on as much money for buying new. Again, there's websites called RV Trader, there's Camping World, there's lots of different sources online, RV dealerships, Craigslist, those sort of things. But as Jared mentioned, it's a good idea to have someone else look at it and inspect it, like a third party.
Unless you really know what you're doing.
Yeah, unless you really know what you're doing, because just like with a used car, I mean, it's incentivized for the seller to just tell you everything's great, but then you might find out there's problems down the line.
Which is exactly what happened to us. We went to a Camping World thinking that would be a much more reputable place to buy than from like someone off Craigslist, obviously. And the salesperson was just, they didn't really know that much about it. It was a trade-in for a new RV. He was like, no, everything's great. We had it checked out. Everything's perfect. No issues here. And, it wasn't. There was water damage. There was some smaller issues. So just have someone go with you so you don't run into a situation 6 months later where you're like, oh, man, I wish I would have known that.
Yeah. So definitely do your research. When it comes to trucks and things like that, just read forums, go on Reddit, like look at different things like truck forums, look up that specific model year, because we thought when we were buying a truck that all that mattered was like the mileage and the year, and it looked okay from the outside, and we drove it around the block and it seemed fine. But later on, when we started having all these issues with the engine, And every time we took it to a diesel mechanic, it was something, I can't remember now, the
6.0.
6.0 liter diesel engine. I don't even know what that means still to this day. But the mechanic would say, do you have the 6.0? And we would say, yeah. And he would say, oh. And so it had all these problems. So you need to do your research. Spend a ton of time on YouTube and Googling things and, ask around. But yeah, definitely ask a third party when you're trying to find your RV or truck.
Yeah, do as much research as you can. Again, with the truck, if you're getting a diesel truck, you don't know anything about diesel, then never a bad idea to take it to a mechanic, have them look at it, make sure it's a good running order, because $100, $200, however much it costs you to get inspected, will save you a lot of headache if there's an issue.
Okay, so something else I wrote down about the logistics of buying an RV would be financing it versus saving up and paying cash. Personally, we started out as new grads. We had no money really saved, other than like maybe a few hundred, $1,000, something like that in our bank account. So we didn't have money to buy a truck or camper. We didn't even know if we would qualify for a loan because we had no income history. We didn't want to make one of our family members co-sign for a loan. So we were just like, it makes more sense for us to work for 6 months. In 6 months, between the two of us, we easily saved up $40,000 to be able to pay for it in cash. That made more sense for us, but it just depends on you and your comfort level with financing it. Obviously, just like financing anything, consider your interest rate, consider all those things. Consider what your monthly payment's going to be if you decide to finance it. Know what you're looking for, get it inspected. Practice closer to home. So we were just so eager to get started that we just hit the ground running and didn't know what we were doing at all. When we bought it, we knew nothing about even how to connect the power cord and connect the sewer line and connect the water line. We had to get them to show us everything at Camping World. So spend some time.
We also used a lot of YouTube. That helped a lot.
Spend some time on YouTube, learn about that stuff. What we think is a great idea is if you have an opportunity to buy it and park it somewhere like at your family's house or a campground near your home for a couple weeks and kind of move into it slowly, get a feel for it before you hit the road and move with it across the country. That's a good idea. In addition to that, just practicing parking it, driving it, backing it in a safe place before you take it on the road is a good idea.
Yeah. I wish we had gotten a little more experience with pulling it, backing it, everything before we hit the road, because that was difficult. I think it's always going to be difficult if you have no experience backing trailers, but yeah, it would have been a lot easier if I had a little bit practice before we left.
Yeah. So the next question regarding logistics of being an RVer and being a traveler that people quite often ask are, how do you find places to park it? How do you find RV parks? Is it easy to find RV parks? And is it easier to do that than it is to find short-term housing? So for us, we felt like finding RV parks was a lot easier than finding short-term housing because we would choose our assignments based on where RV parks were, and the availability was a lot easier to figure out quickly when we were trying to determine if we were going to accept or decline a contract than it was finding out quickly if there was a housing opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we thought the process of finding campgrounds was extremely easy. We would get on Google, we would just search campgrounds near whatever assignment we were considering. So this, before we ever get submitted for a job, we would see that 2 jobs are available. We would just Google campgrounds near whatever city. And we would see, oh, there's 3 options. A couple of them look like they might work. It would take 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And instead of having to look at Airbnb and Furnish Finder and make sure the dates are right and all that. So we really enjoyed that aspect of it. That made it significantly easier. We would know within a very short time if we wanted to get submitted for jobs. We knew we already had a campground that would work, and you can easily just call, make sure they have availability, submit it for the job, and then you're ready to go.
Yep. And so specifically when you're searching, you want to search for not necessarily just campground, but you want to search for the words RV park, because a campground could be anything from just a day use, primitive camping, tent camping, something like that, and it might only just be 1 night, 7 nights, 14 nights max. So you want to look for RV parks, and you want to see if they have a website or if you can call and ask if they do long-term stays. So you want to have an RV park that does month-to-month stays, and ideally you want to find an RV park that has full hookups, which means at your site you can hook up to water, electricity, and sewage. Now, sewage is not always a deal breaker. There are some people who will find campgrounds or RV parks that only have water and electric, and then you can make other arrangements for sewage. Sometimes there are services where they'll come and they'll pump your sewage for you like once a week or once every other week. Sometimes you can just unhook and move to they call it a dump station, where you can empty your sewage and then move back to your spot. We tried to avoid that at all costs. We always just got full hookups, water, electric, sewer. So we never had to move our camper once it was parked. for the 13 weeks or however long, but there are options there. So those are some things you want to look for when you're searching RV park, full hookups, month-to-month stays. And again, it usually just took me a quick phone call. I could usually find out within an hour if we were going to have an RV park availability in the area. Somebody asked if there were specific apps. We typically just used Google Maps,
to find campgrounds.
To find campgrounds, to find RV parks. There are places like you can look on Good Sam's website. There's some apps called like Campendium and stuff, but a lot of times you're going to find just general campgrounds on those. So, you know, sometimes you can set the filters and make sure it says RV park, full hookups, that sort of thing, but Google is our friend for that.
Yep. One other consideration to think about if you're considering this is where do you want to take assignments? Because if you want to just go to big cities or really cool areas that, you know, are popular, it's going to be hard to find campgrounds near those places. So like finding a campground near Boston, we worked close to Boston, it's very difficult. You might have to commute 45 minutes. You might be outside the city, you have to drive in or whatever. So if you're working places like Boston, New York City, Chicago, it's going to be really hard to find campgrounds. So you know, if those are the type of places you want to take contracts, you probably don't want to get a camper. If you're fine going to rural areas, you're not worried about being close to cities, then it's a much better option for those people.
Yeah, and it works really well for us because we didn't want to be near big cities anyway, but it's just going to depend. So I don't remember if we mentioned earlier, but our average campground rent, RV park rent on the East Coast, the places that we took contracts, the lowest we ever paid was about $200, and then after utilities was like $250, $300. And that was just a spot on somebody's land. There were no amenities. It had hookups, and that's all we needed. The most we ever paid, not far from Boston, like an hour outside of Boston, was $900 a month. Now, for some people who take contracts, especially like on the coast of California or near Cape Cod or sometimes near more like vacation destinations, if there are RV parks that you can find, sometimes you can't. But if you can, sometimes there'll be $1,000 plus per month for the RV park.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think, well, RVing is so cheap because you basically rent free. It's not always rent free. One, if you financed your RV.
Well, it's never rent free.
Well,
it's just not always cheap.
It's not always cheap because one, if you finance your RV, obviously you're going to have monthly payments on your RV, maybe your tow vehicle too. You're definitely going to have campground rent. It could be anywhere from the range of $200 a month to $2,000 a month. We looked at some in California, and yeah, we've heard people living by the beach in California at an RV park, $1,500, $1,800, $2,000 a month just for a place to park.
Yeah, we also looked at some. We were in Massachusetts that were on the Cape, and some of those were $2,500 a month in the summer.
Yeah.
So you have to think about those kind of things. If you're going to those tourist destinations or popular places, it's going to be more expensive.
But I'd say more average, from what we've heard from other people and from our experience, it's going to be more in the realm of like $500 to $1,000 a month. We, besides the one that was $900, we never paid more than like $600 a month on the East Coast.
I think our average was around $500 or $550.
So for the most part, it's usually cheap, but it just depends on where you're wanting to go. I saw somebody else also asked, and this kind of goes along with like your month-to-month payments. You do still have to maintain a tax home. So your RV, just because you own it, and it's kind of like a house on wheels, that doesn't count. You have to still have a permanent address that you're paying. That you're paying money to, like rent or a mortgage for your tax home purposes for the tax laws.
Yep. Okay, let's go through some questions. I saw you guys have some good questions, some things that didn't even come up in our brainstorming. So
yeah, and I think some of you guys also answered the questions for the people, which is really great because let's just go all the way to the top. We'll start from the beginning.
Okay, start from the beginning.
Yeah. So thank you guys for your feedback as well. Again, if you are watching this, if you're learning anything, press that thumbs up button, leave us a comment if you have a question, or if you are a current RVer, please leave us your own feedback. I know everybody else would love to hear it too.
Hey Nick, hey Ryan. Ryan had some crazy comments tonight. So Ariel says, I do agree, getting a personal inspection is top of our list after layout. Yeah, for sure. That's something I really wish we would have done.
Yeah.
We would have probably chosen a different camper. We probably would have had a lot less issues, and our opinion might be different had we done that. So.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Ariel says regarding Wi-Fi that they use Starlink, and that's been great for them. We've also heard of other people, like we have a couple friends who the spouse works remotely from the RV, and for them it's extremely important to have consistent Wi-Fi, so they will have like a satellite type Wi-Fi as well as have some what are they, like the hotspots from different carriers. So that way they make sure, depending on where they are, they always have service. So they'll have like one hotspot from Verizon and one from AT&T, and that way they make sure they're hitting all the towers.
Yeah, what's the prices for you guys that have Starlink? Is it expensive? I think it's fairly costly, but when we were traveling, that didn't exist. But if it did, I think we probably would have paid the money to get it, because if it's reliable, you don't have to worry about anything changing. That would have been really nice, because there were situations where it was very frustrating at home trying to watch Netflix or something like that, almost impossible.
There was a time, I don't know if you guys remember, that we didn't have Wi-Fi at one of our campground situations. I think that was the $200 a month one, because it was very bare bones. And we did our Facebook Live videos from the gym parking lot.
In the car, yeah.
In the car. And so for a period, there's kind of like people go through phases watching our videos, you know, when it's relevant to them. And so right after that, I think we went to CSM, and there were some people that met us there, and they'd been watching our videos for that 3-month period or whatever. And they were like, hey, are you guys the ones that do the videos from your car? And we were like, just for the last couple months. I mean, we don't always do videos from
We don't identify that way.
But it was really, it was an interesting time.
Yeah. Ariel says, we've had one issue where we had to deliver our RV
to a ship, which forced us to have a hotel room until it was repaired. So that's one thing that used to bother us and worry us about having the RV and living in it. So we were like, well, what happens if you have to get maintenance done on it or repairs done on it, and you have to move out of it for a while, right?
Yeah.
So we quite often, we put off having like this water damage issue repaired for over a year, because we didn't want to have to take time off and like leave the RV and go stay somewhere. We did have to do it one time. I think for a week we stayed in a cabin at the RV park and took it to get repairs done. It was a nightmare. Sometimes you can find mobile RV repair people, but they do charge a lot.
Yeah.
So
a lot of you guys, if you've listened to a lot of our videos, you already know, but we worked basically, we took almost no days off for like the first 16 or 18 months that we traveled. So we discovered the water damage pretty early on, but it was like, well, yeah, where were we going to take our house to get it repaired? Where were we going to live? So we did not want to do that. So we waited until we had a break or somewhere reasonable to stay, and then we had it repaired.
Yeah. So Kendall says, how do you afford paying for both your tax home space and for the RV? So you're going to have to do this no matter what, right? So if you're a traveler and you plan to take tax-free stipends as part of your pay, you're going to have to pay money at your tax home and at your travel location, whether that's short-term housing or RVing. You should make more than enough to cover both these expenses. We've done videos in the past talking about how to be financially savvy as a traveler, how to make sure to reduce your expenses as much as possible, both at your tax home and your travel location. But I would say in most cases, this is what we're talking about here. You're actually probably going to come out slightly ahead paying campground rent and campground RV costs and whatnot than you are paying short-term rent.
Yeah, our expenses were really low. We had no issue at all. And in fact, there was never a time when we were traveling that I didn't save at least 80% of my after-tax income. So we were probably paying, I think our tax home, we were renting a room back home, so we were paying like $400 a month each for that, and then campgrounds, like I said, averaged about $500 a month. We were splitting that, so that was like $250. So, you know, campground plus tax home, we were each paying like $650 a month, and I think our after-tax income was usually somewhere around $7,000 or $7,500. So it was not even close to being an issue.
Yeah, and so obviously that brings up the issue as a couple, we were able to split rent, right? Split RV park rent. Or when we stayed, the couple times that we have done short-term housing, we split that rent. So in some ways we were able to come out even more ahead, but we have done videos talking about the pros and cons of traveling by yourself and traveling with a spouse. You don't always come out ahead. Yeah. You don't always come out ahead as a couple compared to a solo person, but you should definitely have more than enough pay as a traveler to pay all these expenses and then still save 50% or more of your income.
Yeah, Paula says, how do RVs hold up in a snowstorm or very cold weather? Good question, and the answer is it depends. Some of them are made, they're called Four Seasons campers, they're made for that, where they have the underside is more insulated, and they have where the belly of it is heated so things don't freeze as easily. Ours was not. And we tried to avoid cold weather as much as we could, but we still ran into it sometimes. And in fact, funny story, we bought the camper in December, moved into it in January, and that was a really cold month. It stayed below freezing in Virginia, which doesn't get that cold in Virginia usually, but it stayed below freezing for like a solid 11 days. It never got above freezing, and it was like kind of unheard of. And we had just moved into the camper. Our water froze. We dealt with that for like a week, and that was kind of a nightmare. So I would recommend trying to avoid cold weather if possible. If you specifically want to go to cold weather, then you need to make sure you get one that is a Four Seasons camper that's pretty well insulated.
Yeah, a lot of people who RV try to go to the more mild temperatures in the winter if possible, but there are techniques. Again, Google and YouTube and RV forums are your friend. There's lots of Facebook groups too where you can talk to other travelers and learn their different hacks. Some people fill their water tanks and disconnect the water from the outside because it's the connections that will freeze. If we had known that, we should have done that. But we never did. We would leave our water hooked up and we would sometimes leave it on a drip, but then sometimes we'd come back or wake up in the morning or come back from work that day and our water would be frozen, and then sometimes it wouldn't unfreeze for like 48 hours until temperatures got back up. So sometimes it can be a nightmare.
Yeah, Ariel answered that question as well, and she said it depends on the type of rig you have. And you can get skirting and stuff, which that is true. And we did we do that one time, right?
I don't think we did skirting.
We put something around the bottom because, the cold air blowing underneath the camper makes it way easier. One, it makes it colder inside, and two, it makes it way easier to freeze.
I think we insulated our windows, and we had a blanket in front of the door at one time to insulate the caps in the blanket, and that was a whole thing.
Yeah.
Because we left it up like a big giant curtain, and one time it got caught in the door, and we almost locked ourselves out. Didn't you fall down the steps or something because it got caught in the door? It was a mess.
Yeah.
It was good times. So.
Yeah. So you want a Four Seasons camper if possible. Try to avoid really cold temperatures, but people do it. So.
Okay.
Kendall also says, do you have to get a diesel truck to pull it? And I saw Ariel answered that one as well. And yeah, it depends on the type of camper you get. We bought a big fifth wheel, pretty heavy, so we had to have a diesel truck. The tow capacity, it wouldn't work with gas-powered trucks.
So what you have to do is find out when you are looking at campers, some of the research that you have to do, you have to look at the specifications of the camper, and it'll have, I think it's called like a dry weight and a
loaded weight or
something like that. So the dry weight is with none of your belongings in it, and then there's an estimated weight for if you do have your belongings and your shelf in it and whatnot.
And so you wanna make sure that there's some leeway there. You don't want to get a truck that pulls 9,000 pounds and get a camper that's 9,000 pounds, because you run into issues, especially if you're going through any mountainous areas where you're going up a hill and you're dropping down to 45 miles an hour and it's dangerous. So
I didn't finish explaining that part. So then you have to figure out the dry weight and the loaded weight of the camper, and then when you're looking at a truck, it will have a specification for what load capacity it can have. So if you get a travel trailer or a fifth wheel, you have to look at the truck and see how big the truck has to be. So that's why there's an F-150, an F-250, an F-350, gas versus diesel. Sometimes you have to get a dually, which has the double set of wheels. You would just have to look and see which truck specification fits the specification for your RV.
Yep. Our RV park's pretty safe. This is a great question, and this is a concern we had. And actually, the only traveler I knew when we started, I asked him a bunch of questions. And one thing I told him, I was like, we're thinking about getting an RV. We're going to save some money, buy one. He was like, I wouldn't want to live at trailer parks, but maybe you could make it work. And he was like, it could be dangerous and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah. But what I didn't realize, and what he didn't realize either, I guess, is that you're not staying in trailer parks. You're staying in RV parks, which are very different. So RV parks are usually wealthy people coming through, older people driving around the country, parking for a couple days, and they're like really nice, big, like bus-looking RV. It's not like, long-term people there. And we never had any issues at RV parks. There was one place we stayed that was slightly sketchy.
So to clarify, there are some RV parks that allow people to stay long term, like really long term. A lot of them have certain rules where they won't let you have RVs that are older than a certain age, and they do this so that they don't have people who end up staying there and having like these broke down RVs that are basically trailers that are never going to leave. But some RV parks are more strict about that than others. So sometimes you will end up at an RV park, a campground, where people do live there long term, and sometimes it is somebody who's poorer, who has a broken down looking RV. But we always felt very safe. We always felt very welcome. People were extremely kind. I can't tell you how many times we had a neighbor offer to help us with things. We had, like we mentioned, backing in and parking can be really difficult. We had somebody help and offer to back it in for us numerous times.
Yeah.
We had one time we accidentally flooded the bathroom, and my neighbor came and helped me with like her shop vac thing that sucked up the water. We had people check on stuff for us. People are extremely nice. We never had any issues.
Yeah, so those long-term people, that's not the norm. But in our experience, the people that are there, either short-term or long-term, are very nice people at campgrounds. I don't know why that is, but everyone's always extremely friendly. We never had any issues. The only time that one was kind of sketchy, that was when we were in Massachusetts. It was a huge campground. But even though it seemed a little sketchy, it was fine. We never had any issues.
Yep.
Can I read that one?
Ariel says, I would add that RV parks, it's fairly easy, but time of year versus location can be challenging. Cody's had quite a few Florida jobs over the last few months, but due to snowbirds and Canadians, these parks stay booked. There are some very popular places that can get booked out for the whole winter season and book out 8 to 12 months in advance. Yes, this is a great point. So we found this out in addition to Florida, in Arizona with snowbirds. So we thought, oh, we'll go to Arizona in December, January, February. It'd be great. It'd be a really good time of year to be there. Yeah, well, so the snowbirds go too. And so a lot of the campgrounds actually in Arizona, they not only will book out, but they also have age limitations. Some of them will only
I saw someone commented on that.
Some of them will only rent to 65 and older. So they have like age discrimination against younger people. They only rent to snowbirds. There are ways around this. So in addition to looking for RV parks, you can also look to see if there's somebody who rents part of their land privately or their driveway where they have hookups in place. This happens quite often. We found a spot like that in Arizona. We ended up not taking those jobs, but there was a spot on Craigslist. Or you can just ask around to the RV parks. They might even know. They might say, hey, no, we don't have any spots, but you might ask so-and-so. They might have some.
Yep. We actually stayed on someone's land twice, and both times were great, extremely cheap. So you don't have all the amenities, but it's more affordable usually. Did you all take 2 cars or just the truck and RV? I'm traveling with my boyfriend, not a therapist, so I was thinking we'd probably need 2 cars unless he works from home. Good question. So we specifically got the truck and 5th wheel instead of getting like a Class A, Class B, Class C, so that when you unhook the truck, you unhook the camper, you have the truck to drive. So what we did, I pulled the 5th wheel in the truck. Whitney drove her car separately, and she just followed me in case there was any issues. And then when we parked, set up the camper, I drove the truck to work. She drove her car to work.
Yep.
So that makes the most sense for people usually.
Yeah. There's other options though. Some people will ship the other car so they don't have to drive it separate. Some people will live a place where they can bike and they'll just bring a bike with them. We've heard of mopeds. We've heard of people buying the type of camper, the type of 5th wheel that's called a toy hauler. It basically has a garage that opens in the back and you can park a small vehicle in there, like a golf cart or a motorcycle or a moped. And so then the other person may not have to have a car per se, but they could have that type of vehicle. There's a lot of options.
Yeah, so it was Melanie that said most every RV park in Arizona is 55 plus.
55 plus, not 65 plus.
Yeah, so that's another sort of a con to traveling in a camper, is that you have to be careful where you go if you're going really cold places or you're going places that have age restrictions. So just think about that.
Yeah.
Tammy says, isn't there a tax break on having an RV? No. So I know there is if you have like I talked to an accountant about this, and I think if you have a mortgage on it, or not a mortgage, but basically the equivalent of a mortgage, you have a loan, I think you can write off the interest in some situations like you would a mortgage. But we didn't have a loan or anything on it, so we didn't have that. But besides that, there's not any write-offs or anything that I know of. Jacob said, this is great information. Thanks for tuning in, Jacob.
Thanks, Jacob.
Ariel says, Starlink for travel is $135 a month. So a little pricey, but it would be extremely nice to have consistent Wi-Fi.
Yeah, for sure.
Melanie says about $130 a month.
Thanks for all the engagement, guys. Lots of questions today.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Okay. Cody goes on to say regarding the weather that our camper is 4 seasons. We've been in 5 separate snow days, quite a few freezing days. The heated hose makes the difference. They haven't had any issues.
Yeah, we learned a lot. So our water froze quite a bit the first year we were in it. We started in the winter. We didn't know much. But we learned as we went. We got a heated water hose like cover, or no, heated water hose. It was just a heated water hose. And we also made sure if it got really cold to leave the water dripping or something so that it wasn't just sitting there while we were at work or overnight. And after we got the hang of it, 3 or 4 months, we almost never had any more issues with freezing. So it's part of that learning curve.
Yeah, there's just a lot to learn. So we hope, if anything, well, let us know if you have any more questions. It looks like that's everything for now. But just to kind of summarize, it is a lifestyle choice. If you are somebody who is getting into travel therapy or travel healthcare and you're thinking that you just want to go into it to save money, we definitely don't think it's the top choice just to save money. You have to look at RVing as a lifestyle choice. You have to want to, be invested in it, want to learn about the lifestyle. There's going to be a lot of things to learn, but it can be really enjoyable. It can be an amazing experience. It's just not for everyone.
Yeah. So I think overall, I would say we were very in the middle in the experience, whether we are glad we did it or we didn't. But there was a lot of things like the consistency, like we talked about, packing and moving. It's so much nicer to not have to do that. People at the campgrounds were really friendly. Being able to have some weekends where we went out and had like bonfires outside, that was really nice. So there was a lot of things we really enjoyed about it, and there was obviously some downsides, but a lot of that could have been mitigated if we just knew a little bit more before we started. So, but yeah, again, I would not jump into it just to save money because it's probably not going to be as cost efficient as you think it would be.
Yep. If you guys have any questions after this video, if you watch later on the replay or you listen on the podcast, you can leave a comment, you can send us a message. We have gotten some specific questions from people before about buying their RV. To be honest, we're not the best people to ask. We've had people say like, what things should I look for? What brand truck? What year? What model? We are not the best people to ask. You should really find someone who does that more for a living, who has had more experience. Somebody, especially like if you have an uncle or an aunt or a cousin or a mom or dad or grandpa who has RV'd a lot in their lifetime, who has maybe bought more than one RV, who knows a little bit more about trucks and things like that. We're not the people to ask. Yes, we did own one, but we made a lot of bad choices. So I'm sorry we can't specifically help you with all those questions, but if you have questions about just like the logistics of being a travel therapist and traveling in an RV and those kind of things, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help.
Yep. And so we're in Dubai now. We're headed to Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. We'll try to do some videos, but it's going to be hard, obviously, with the time difference. From Singapore on, we're going to be like over 12 hours ahead, which is kind of weird. But we're trying to make some videos. If you guys have any suggestions for videos in the future, please let us know.
Yep. Hopefully this is informative and helpful. Let us know if you have any questions. Again, if you got any value out of this, we'd love you to hit the thumbs up button, share it with a friend, tag a friend if they need to know this information too. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll talk to you next time.
Yep, take care.
Bye.